forbid that today's citizens and tomorrow's leaders might make decisions based on what is instead of what some self-appointed arbiter of language wants things to be considered. In other words, stop that critical thinking and become good little Stepford citizens. If you want a good story to do, you might check out your local colleges and high schools and see how many do in fact have speech codes and bar speakers based on some code, which frankly does little to promote the First Amendment, much to stifle it. I can assure you that on many college campuses, what I've said so far would be sufficient to keep me from ever speaking on that campus. All of this, mind you, despite some 36 lawsuits against these same codes, which have been won by the plaintiffs. In many cases, institutions of higher learning simply ignore the court orders, anything to soothe the exposed nerve endings of the perpetually indignant society. Not that such codes are limited to academe. Consider the decision by some media outlets to no longer use the term illegal aliens. No, they are undocumented workers. They haven't been convicted of anything, and besides, people cannot be illegal. That's fine. But if we're going to go into the euphemism business, shall we start referring to bank robberies as unauthorized withdrawals? Until their day in court, bank robbers haven't been convicted of anything either. Now, the point here is not about illegal immigration in that particular debate. My point is simply, how far are we in the news business prepared to go to keep from hurting the feelings of those who break the laws some of us may not like? Fine again, I don't like the speed laws. Maybe I should start referring to those caught in speed traps as the deceleration challenge. By the way, regarding that professional football team in your nation's capital, forget Redskins. Given their record the past 2 years, I think we should move the franchise to the Philippines and rename them the Manila Folders. And before I leave the subject, let me turn to my own ethnic group and wonder, why doesn't anyone ever get perpetually indignant over the Fighting Irish of Notre Dame? Just a thought. Depends on whose stereotype, I guess, gets the most publicity. One more problem facing freedom of information, it's not just apathy, it's also ignorance. And we have a lot of that in this country. Some fools and or those with an agenda have virtually stripped civics education from our schools. A survey by the Annenberg Public Policy Center finds just 36% of adults can name all 3 branches of government. 35% can't name even one. Only 27% of Americans know it takes a 2/3 vote of the House and the Senate to override a presidential veto, and 21% think a 5-4 Supreme Court decision is sent back to Congress for reconsideration. Might not be a bad idea, but it is not, in fact. Almost half of all adults surveyed cannot tell you which party controls either house of Congress. Almost half. But they can tell you who came in second on Dancing with the Stars. Now, what are we doing about these problems? Well, civics education initiative bills are being introduced in 8 states. I'm sorry to say Iowa is not one of them. Congress is considering a bill to strengthen the Freedom of Information Act, requiring federal agencies to adopt a presumption of openness when considering the release of government information, and would cut back on exceptions. The Coalition for Court Transparency is asking the Federal Judicial Conference to institute a uniform same-day audio policy for hearings conducted in the 13 federal courts of appeal. And it is heartening to hear of a poll by McLaughlin and Associates finding 74% of us would like to see cameras and microphones in the U.S. Supreme Court. No fewer than 188 research universities are suing the Federal Aviation Administration right now to keep the FAA from cracking down on consumer drones, which actually might have gotten me here faster than United Airlines, I don't know. Journalism organizations are fighting some good fights, and those include things as basic as their membership, for example. It's important. A gathering like this, in how many states of the country could a gathering like this attract as many people? 8 or 9, maybe, I don't know. Not 50, that's for sure. How many local journalism organizations do you know where none of the leadership positions is held by a working journalist? I take nothing away from the contributions made by our good friends in public relations, but we in journalism are not all too busy to serve, or at least we shouldn't be. The Society of Professional Journalists has approved an endowed forever fund to support SPJ's advocacy efforts, sort of a legal offense fund. Next Tuesday, October 7th, is an important day, National News Engagement Day, aimed at encouraging the public to engage with us. From community meetings, to visits to schools, to chats on the air, to editorial page guest columns, what a great chance to really tell our story. Journalism schools are reevaluating their curricula and methods, from technical skills to hands-on training to ethics. Speaking of which, the Society of Professional Journalists, for the first time in 18 years, has revised its code of ethics, and the Radio Television Digital News Association is considering that as well. Goodness knows we need that. I refer back to the Alaskan news reporter who said, "Bleep it, I quit," after revealing, finally, that she owns the medical marijuana business on which she was reporting. When was that not covered in J School 101? You think that's bad? In Nogales, Arizona, the mayor and the city council say coverage of the city on radio station KOFH-FM became very negative after the city stopped paying station commentators for favorable coverage. That's a charge, but it hasn't been refuted yet either, and we'll have to keep our eyes on that. And let's not forget the case of Status Labs of Texas. Status Labs of Texas is reported by NPR to be offering media outlets bribes to mention Status Lab clients favorably in their news copy. Out and out cash. And believe it or not, Status Lab specializes in image and reputation management. Did I forget to mention International Pickle Week? Well, I'll get back to that now. As was mentioned by Lyle in my introduction, my only real enduring claim to fame came because of National Freedom of Information Day. It will appear on my epitaph, I'm sure, along with the words, "We'll be right back." This, you may have noticed the button that I'm wearing says Pickle Power. I do a lot of feature reporting and I get a lot of press releases, but few to equal what the Pickle Packers International sent me in May of 1977. It was jam-packed with facts, figures, even 8x10 glossies of pickles, which presumably I was to hold up to the microphone, all extolling the merits of International Pickle Month. I interviewed the president of Pickle Packers International, William R. Bill the Dill Moore, and I did the feature story. But it hit me while I was doing it that if pickles deserve a whole month, then surely something as precious as freedom of information deserve at least a day. And so it was that I did make the suggestion to the Society of Professional Journalists, and in fact since the 1980 March 16th inaugural edition, the FOI Day has been observed nationwide. And it's observed with proclamations issued by mayors and governors. We gather to talk about FOI among ourselves and consider the job done. It isn't. I recently compiled a list of 9 separate polls indicating public ignorance of or apathy about freedom of information. They include a First Amendment Center finding that 49% of the public, a plurality, believe the First Amendment gives us too much freedom, and 35% believe the media have too much freedom. I wear 2 hats at Westwood One Radio. I host a nightly Jim Bohannon talk show, heard locally on 1430 AM KSAI, and the news magazine America in the Morning, heard intergalactically on 1040 AM WHO. In fact, I will be visiting Van and Bonnie at 8:30 in the morning. I do talk and I do news, and I understand the differences, and I know that as news people we are supposed to be the dispassionate dispensers of daily events, and that's as it should be. And I'll be the first to admit that some of my talk colleagues carry this passion thing a bit far, or as I like to tell them, you're not supposed to freebase the Prozac. Still, some passion regarding the First Amendment is in order, and not just here and not just through such groups as the Iowa Freedom of Information Council and the Iowa Newspaper Foundation and IowaWatch, who passionately push for the First Amendment, but who can't do everything. While I agree with most everything that's been said tonight, let me remind you of 6 little words. We don't need to hear this. We know. It's the public who needs to hear this. and understand this and care about this. Now, it would be unseemly, even unprofessional, to engage in passionate advocacy if you agree with those who really do believe that the First Amendment is just a perk for a special interest group, us. But if you believe, as I do, that the First Amendment is for everyone, and that we've just been granted the temporary privilege of making a living at it, then there's nothing wrong with reaching out to people. If only we knew how. Oh, son of a gun, that's right. We do. We do know how. We, in this line of work, possess some of the bulliest pulpits on the planet. We know how. And we should be passionately, shamelessly promoting the daylights out of the benefits of the First Amendment, however we can. We need to shout it from the rooftops and the editorial pages and the news sets using whatever we can, just like the pickle people do. Be creative. Think outside the proverbial box. Everything has naming rights these days. How about promoting the Bill of Rights that way? Maybe the Smith and Wesson Second Amendment, perhaps, or for the Fourth Amendment, perhaps WikiLeaks. They know all about unreasonable searches. Westwood One has dibs on the First Amendment. Whatever promotes the right to know. Create a First Amendment wardrobe malfunction. Come on, female anchors, all we ask that the letters FOI be strategically placed on relevant parts of your body. Nothing more, nothing more. Promote cap and talk, in which we buy and sell credits to speak up or shut up. Get a groundhog, call him First Amendment Phil. If he sees a shadow, it means 6 more weeks of bad access. Whatever. Just promote. And do so without being so damned hung up on decorum. Foolishness aside, I really do fear we could lose this battle, and that once lost, it might never be retrieved. And so as you go forth tonight, if you remember nothing else about this evening, I would hope that you would remember International Pickle Month. And I want you to loudly and passionately kick some First Amendment ass. Thank you very much.